"No one marries a fat girl, sir, but I can cook," said the bride. The rancher's reply changed her life. Aisha had always felt invisible in her small town. People would pass by her on the streets and rarely notice her, and when they did, their eyes often lingered on her weight rather than her face or her smile. From a young age, she learned that appearances mattered in her town, that being different made life harder, and that even kind words could be overshadowed by judgment. Her family, though loving, struggled with money, running a small food stall that sold simple homemade dishes. Aisha spent most of her days helping her mother chop vegetables, knead dough, and stir large pots of spicy curries and sweet puddings. She loved cooking more than anything else, but even her talent, her passion, could not shield her from the constant whispers in the marketplace. At school, Aisha's life had been a mix of quiet pride in her abilities and painful embarrassment from her classmates. When she won small competitions for cooking or baking, the applause was always polite but short-lived, quickly replaced by teasing remarks about her size. "No one will ever want to marry a girl like you," some girls would say, smirking. At first, she tried to ignore them, telling herself that talent and kindness mattered more than looks. But as the years went by, the words sank in, and a small part of her began to believe them. She watched her friends, slim and cheerful, receive attention from boys while she remained overlooked. Despite all this, Aisha had a quiet confidence in her heart. She knew she had something special. Her hands could transform simple ingredients into meals that made people smile, dishes that could bring warmth to anyone who ate them. Her family depended on her cooking to attract customers, and she took pride in every dish she made. Every morning she would wake up before dawn, sweeping the small courtyard outside her home, washing the pots and pans and preparing ingredients with care. The aroma of spices would fill their tiny kitchen, and Aisha would hum softly as she worked. Cooking was her world, her refuge, the place where she felt in control. Her parents often worried about her loneliness. They loved her dearly and wanted her to find someone who would value her for who she was. Her mother would sometimes say, "Aisha, your heart is beautiful. One day someone will see that, even if the town does not." Her father, quiet and practical, would nod and add, "Talent, kindness, and courage, those are worth more than anything else. Don't ever forget that." Yet deep down, Aisha felt the weight of society's eyes. She wondered if anyone could ever look past her appearance to see the person she truly was. It was in the middle of this uncertainty that Shiraz entered her life. Shiraz was a rancher, a man well known in the town for his wealth, his authority, and his straightforward nature. He owned vast fields of land, cattle, and horses, and managed his property with precision. People respected him, and some even feared him a little. He had a reputation for being selective and serious, especially when it came to marriage. No one expected him to take an interest in a girl like Aisha, yet fate has a way of surprising people. Aisha's family arranged a meeting with Shiraz, hoping that he might consider her for marriage. The invitation made her heart race, and 1,000 thoughts rushed through her mind. What if he laughed at her? What if he agreed to meet her out of politeness and then rejected her in front of everyone? She spent the night before the meeting in quiet worry, practicing polite words and reminding herself to stay calm. In the morning, she carefully dressed in a modest, clean outfit, tied her hair neatly, and adjusted the small apron she always wore when cooking. She tried to hide her nervousness, but it clung to her like a shadow. When Aisha arrived at Shiraz's large ranch, she was struck by the difference between their worlds. The house was grand yet welcoming, with polished wooden floors and wide windows that let sunlight flood the rooms. She could hear the soft lowing of cattle in the distance and the gentle clatter of horses in the stables. Everything smelled fresh and earthy, unlike the bustling streets and smoky kitchens of her town. She felt small and out of place, yet there was something calming about the ranch, as if it understood patience and hard work. Shiraz greeted her with a polite nod. He was taller than she expected, with strong shoulders and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything, yet there was no judgment in his expression. He asked questions about her life, her family, and her cooking, listening intently. Aisha spoke with honesty, her hands clasped nervously in front of her, hoping her words would be enough to impress him. As the conversation continued, the tension in her chest grew heavier. Finally, she took a deep breath and said something that had been on her mind for years. "No one marries a fat girl, sir, but I can cook." The words hung in the air, heavier than she expected. She expected a laugh, a dismissive glance, or perhaps even the polite silence of someone unsure what to say. But Shiraz did none of these. Instead, he paused for a moment, studying her with an intensity that made her heart pound. Then, with a calm and deliberate voice, he said something that caught her completely off guard. He told her that cooking was a skill that spoke far more about a person than appearance ever could. He said that strength, kindness, and talent mattered, and that anyone could see her dedication and the care she put into her work. Aisha felt her cheeks flush, not with embarrassment, but with surprise and a spark of hope she had not felt in years. Shiraz did not dismiss her words. He challenged the town's assumptions in a simple yet profound way. The meeting ended with an unexpected offer. Shiraz invited Aisha to the ranch for a trial visit to cook for his family and see how she fit into the life there. She was stunned. The opportunity felt like a door opening into a world she had only dreamed about, a world where she could be judged for her skill and heart rather than her appearance. She walked home that day in a daze, thinking of the journey that lay ahead. Could she truly change her life with something as simple as cooking? Could someone like Shiraz really see her for who she was? Back at home, Aisha shared the news with her family, their faces lit up with hope and pride. Her mother hugged her tightly, whispering, "This is your chance, my dear. Show them who you are." Her father placed a firm hand on her shoulder, saying, "Remember, courage is as important as skill. Go forward with confidence." Aisha felt a mixture of excitement and fear. She had never faced such an opportunity before. It was not just about marriage. It was about proving her worth, confronting society's shallow judgments, and embracing her own potential. Over the next few days, Aisha prepared for her visit with meticulous care. She practiced new recipes, organized her knives and utensils, and rehearsed the dishes she knew best. Every step reminded her of her strengths and the passion that had sustained her through years of criticism. At the same time, she felt the old insecurities creeping in, the fear that she was not enough, that her weight would overshadow all her efforts. She pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on what she could control: the food she would prepare, the care she would put into every dish, and the sincerity she would bring to the ranch. When the day finally came, Aisha set out with a small basket of ingredients, her heart pounding in anticipation. The ranch seemed larger and more imposing than before, yet she felt a strange calm, as if she were walking toward her destiny. Shiraz greeted her at the door, his expression unreadable but not unkind. She stepped inside, feeling the weight of the town's expectations, the whispers of her past, and the hope for her future all at once. This moment marked the beginning of a journey she could not yet imagine, a journey that would challenge her, transform her, and ultimately redefine the way she saw herself. It was a journey where courage, honesty, and skill mattered more than the narrow judgments of society, where her talents could shine and where a single conversation could change the course of her life forever. Aisha took a deep breath, smiled at Shiraz, and whispered to herself, "I can do this." And with that, her life began to change, one dish at a time. Aisha could hardly believe that she had been invited to Shiraz's ranch. Her mind raced with excitement and nervousness at the same time. The night before her visit, she barely slept, tossing and turning as she thought about the recipes she would prepare. She wanted everything to be perfect. This was her chance, not just to impress Shiraz, but to prove to herself that she had value beyond the judgments of the town. She wanted to show that her talent, her effort, and her heart were worth noticing. Early the next morning, she gathered fresh ingredients from her small kitchen. She carefully selected vegetables, herbs, and spices, choosing the finest items her family could afford. Each item she picked, each onion she peeled, and each dough ball she rolled reminded her of the long hours she had spent in her family's kitchen. Cooking was not just a skill for her, it was a language, a way to express love, dedication. Every dish she made carried a piece of her heart, and now it would carry her hopes as well. When she arrived at the ranch, Shiraz was waiting for her at the entrance. His calm demeanor and steady gaze reminded her that this was serious, but also reassuring. He guided her into the kitchen, a space much larger than her own at home, with shining counters, rows of utensils, and a collection of pots and pans that would make any cook feel inspired. For a moment, Aisha felt overwhelmed. She had never worked in a kitchen so big, with so many tools at her disposal. But she reminded herself that skill mattered more than surroundings. She took a deep breath, rolled up her sleeves, and began. Her first task was to prepare a traditional feast for Shiraz's family, who would be joining them later that afternoon. She started with simple dishes: fresh bread, lightly spiced lentils, and a vegetable stew simmering gently on the stove. She measured each spice carefully, tasted every dish, and adjusted flavors with precision. Even as the kitchen grew warmer from the flames and her hands moved faster from nerves, she maintained focus. Cooking was her comfort zone, her language, and she spoke it fluently, even when her heart raced with uncertainty. Shiraz observed her quietly. He did not interfere, but he watched closely, noting her movements, her focus, and her attention to detail. He could see that she was not just cooking. She was creating. Every chop of a vegetable, every stir of a pot was done with care and purpose. He noticed how she tasted and adjusted, how she organized her ingredients, and how she worked efficiently despite the unfamiliar kitchen. Her skills impressed him, but what impressed him more was the dedication behind each action. She was not simply following recipes. She was putting her soul into her work. As Aisha worked, she overheard the ranch staff talking in hushed tones. Some seemed skeptical, whispering about her appearance and wondering if she could handle the task. At first, the words stung, and she felt a familiar wave of doubt creep in. But she pushed the thoughts aside. This was not about them. It was about her and her own abilities. She reminded herself of her mother's words: talent and courage matter more than what others think.
With each dish she prepared, she felt a growing confidence.
She was proving, not to them but to herself, that she could rise above the shallow judgments of the world. By late morning, the aromas of her cooking had begun to fill the ranch. The smells of spices, simmering vegetables, and fresh bread created a warm and inviting atmosphere. Shiraz walked through the kitchen again, nodding quietly as he tasted a spoonful of the lentil stew. "Good," he said simply. "No exaggeration, no empty praise, just acknowledgement." To Aisha, those small words felt like a reward. She knew she was on the right track. When the family arrived, Aisha's nerves returned, but she welcomed them with a polite smile and a humble bow. Shiraz introduced her as the young woman who would prepare the meal that day. His words were simple but carried respect, which made Aisha's chest swell with a quiet pride. She felt seen in a way she had never been seen before. The family watched her work with polite interest, curious about her talent and her presence. As she served the dishes, she noticed the subtle expressions of delight on the family's faces. Shiraz's mother complimented the texture of the bread, his younger sister praised the aroma of the stew, and even the older family members who had initially seemed skeptical nodded appreciatively. Aisha felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief and pride. She realized that this was the first time in her life that she had been recognized for her abilities, not her appearance. Throughout the day, Shiraz remained quietly supportive. He offered occasional advice on the logistics of serving such a large household, but never judged her or interfered unnecessarily. He treated her as an equal, valuing her skill and dedication above all else. This respect was new to Aisha. She had grown accustomed to being underestimated and overlooked, and the experience was transforming her. Each smile, each nod of approval strengthened her confidence, helping her believe in herself in ways she had never imagined. Later that afternoon, after the family had eaten and complimented the meal, Shiraz pulled Aisha aside. His eyes were calm, but there was a seriousness in his expression. "You have talent," he said, "and more importantly, I can see your dedication. That matters far more than what the town says about your appearance." Aisha's heart leapt. She had never heard such words spoken to her with sincerity. No one had ever told her that her worth was based on her skills, her effort, and her heart, rather than her weight. For the first time, Aisha felt truly validated. Her fears, the doubts that had haunted her for years, began to fade. She realized that her cooking, her dedication, and her honesty were enough. She did not need to change her body to be respected or loved. This realization was liberating. It gave her a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. a quiet confidence that began to take root deep in her heart. Over the next few days, Shiraz invited Aisha to stay at the ranch longer to help with the household and the kitchen. This was not just a test of her cooking, but also of her character, her patience, and her ability to adapt to a new environment. Aisha embraced the challenge wholeheartedly. She learned to manage larger kitchens, organize multiple dishes at once, and work with unfamiliar ingredients. Each task, though challenging, strengthened her confidence and deepened her sense of self-worth. She also began to observe Shiraz in ways she hadn't before. She saw how he treated his staff with fairness and respect, how he managed the ranch with discipline but kindness, and how he valued honesty and hard work. These observations taught her valuable lessons about character, responsibility, and leadership. She realized that Shiraz's respect for her was not just about her talent but also about her integrity, her perseverance, and the courage she showed in facing the world. As the days passed, the bond between Aisha and Shiraz grew, not in a romantic sense yet, but in mutual respect and understanding. He admired her resilience, her skill, and her honesty. She admired his fairness, his calm authority, and the way he valued character over appearances. Together, they created a partnership of trust, where Aisha felt safe to be herself and to express her abilities fully. By the end of her stay, Aisha had transformed in more ways than one. She had gained confidence, learned new skills, and realized her own value. More importantly, she understood that societal judgments were not the measure of her worth. She had impressed Shiraz not by changing who she was, but by embracing herself fully, by showing courage, talent, and sincerity. When it was time to return home, Aisha felt a mixture of sadness and excitement. She would miss the ranch, the supportive environment, and the sense of purpose she had found there. But she also felt hopeful for the future. She knew that this experience had changed her life forever. She had faced her fears, proven her abilities, and discovered a strength within herself that she had never known existed. As she walked away from the ranch, she whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." She had no idea how much her life would continue to change, but she felt ready. Ready to face the town's judgments, ready to embrace opportunities, and ready to live a life defined by her courage, her skill, and her heart. And so Aisha left the ranch that day not just as a cook, but as a young woman transformed. Someone who had begun to see her true worth and who was beginning a journey that would reshape her life forever. After her stay at the ranch, Aisha returned home with a new sense of purpose. Her confidence had grown and she felt stronger than ever. For the first time, she began to see herself not as a fat girl to be judged by the town, but as a capable, talented young woman who had proven herself in front of someone who truly mattered. Yet, life in the small town had not changed. People still whispered, still stared, and still judged those who dared to step outside society's narrow expectations. The first few days after her return were quiet. Aisha spent her time helping her family in the kitchen, but now her attitude had shifted. She worked not only to provide for her family, but also as a way to strengthen herself. Every dish she prepared carried the confidence she had gained at the ranch. She experimented with new recipes, learned to balance flavors more precisely, and added her own touches to traditional dishes. Her family noticed the change immediately. Her mother's eyes sparkled with pride, and her father often gave her a subtle nod of approval, something he rarely did openly. Despite this new inner strength, Aisha could not ignore the whispers of the town. The news that she had cooked for Shiraz's family spread quickly. Some neighbors were impressed, others were skeptical, and a few were openly mocking. "No one will ever take her seriously," one woman whispered to another. "She may cook well, but she is far too heavy to be anyone's choice." Aisha overheard some of these words as she walked through the market, and though they stung, she refused to let them shake her newfound confidence. She reminded herself that the opinions of others did not define her worth. Shiraz, meanwhile, continued to show interest in Aisha's progress, inviting her back to the ranch occasionally. Each visit allowed her to deepen her skills and understanding of the household. She learned how to manage larger meals, how to organize a kitchen efficiently, and how to work with staff who were unfamiliar with her methods. These experiences were challenging, but she approached each task with determination. With every successful meal she prepared, she felt her self-esteem grow, and her relationship with Shiraz evolved into one of trust and mutual respect. During one visit, Aisha was given a significant responsibility to prepare a feast for a visiting family from another town. It was an important event, and the success of the meal would reflect not only on her but also on Shiraz and his family. Aisha felt the pressure keenly, knowing that mistakes could bring criticism, but she also saw it as an opportunity to prove herself further. She spent days planning, shopping for ingredients, and rehearsing recipes. Each dish she prepared was made with care, attention to detail, and a touch of her own creativity. On the day of the feast, the ranch was bustling with activity. Staff moved efficiently around the kitchen, and Aisha coordinated the preparation with confidence. Shiraz watched quietly, occasionally offering advice, but allowing her to lead. The meal was served, and the visiting family's faces lit up with delight. They praised the flavors, the presentation, and the balance of the dishes. Aisha felt a surge of pride. This was validation of her hard work, skill, and the courage she had shown by stepping into unfamiliar territory. However, the town's judgment did not fade. When word of the successful feast reached the local gossip circles, reactions were mixed. Some people began to whisper with admiration, noting that Aisha had proved herself in a way few expected. Others remained critical, focusing on her weight rather than her talent. She may cook well, but she will never be respected for anything else, some claimed. Aisha heard these words, but no longer allowed them to control her emotions. She had learned that true confidence comes from within, and the approval of those who matter, like Shiraz, was far more valuable than idle gossip. One evening, after returning from the ranch, Aisha sat in her small courtyard reflecting on her journey. She thought about the hours she had spent cooking, the nervousness she had felt in Shiraz's kitchen, and the praise she had received. She realized how far she had come from the girl who once believed no one would ever marry her because of her size. She had faced fear, embraced opportunity, and grown stronger in ways she could never have imagined. This self-reflection deepened her sense of purpose, and she began to see a future where she could shape her own destiny, free from society's narrow judgments. A turning point came when Shiraz invited Aisha to assist in organizing a local celebration at the ranch. The event was intended to bring together townspeople, neighbors, and visiting families, and Aisha's role was to manage the kitchen and prepare the main dishes. This was not just a test of her cooking skills, but also of her ability to interact with the community and handle public scrutiny. Aisha accepted the challenge, seeing it as an opportunity to demonstrate not only her culinary talent, but also her strength of character. In the days leading up to the celebration, Aisha worked tirelessly. She planned menus, delegated tasks to staff, and ensured every detail was attended to. The process was demanding, and she faced moments of doubt, but each time she remembered Shiraz's words. That dedication, skill, and honesty mattered far more than appearances. These words became her anchor, guiding her through moments of stress and uncertainty. On the day of the celebration, the ranch was filled with visitors. Aisha moved with calm authority, directing staff, arranging ingredients, and overseeing the cooking. She noticed the curious glances of townspeople, some skeptical, some admiring, and she felt a quiet strength within her. She was no longer the nervous girl who doubted her worth. She was a young woman capable of leading, creating, and inspiring. Each dish she prepared was met with appreciation, and the praise she received from Shiraz's family and other attendees reinforced her growing confidence. During the event, a group of townspeople whispered criticisms about Aisha's weight and her role in the celebration. Aisha overheard some of their remarks but did not allow them to disturb her. She continued her work with focus and determination, letting her actions speak louder than their words. Shiraz noticed the tension and quietly defended her, reminding the guests that her talent, dedication, and integrity were far more important than superficial judgments. His support was public and firm, and it left a strong impression on everyone present. This public endorsement marked a turning point in Aisha's journey. Some townspeople began to view her differently, recognizing her skill and character rather than focusing solely on her appearance. While not everyone changed their opinions, the seeds of respect were planted. Aisha realized that she could not control everyone's perception of her, but she could control her own actions and how she carried herself. Death to the turncoat! This realization gave her a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. As the celebration continued, Aisha found herself enjoying the interactions with townspeople who approached her with genuine interest in her cooking. They asked for recipes, sought advice on meal preparation, and complimented her organizational skills. Each conversation reinforced her sense of self-worth and reminded her that talent and dedication could earn respect, even in the face of initial prejudice. She began to see that change in perception was possible, not through confrontation or anger, but through consistent effort, skill, and integrity. By the end of the celebration, Aisha felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Death to the turncoat! She had not only prepared a successful feast, but had also navigated the scrutiny of the town with grace and confidence. Shiraz approached her privately and commended her for her leadership, her composure, and her talent. His words were sincere and meaningful, reinforcing the lessons she had learned about self-respect, perseverance, and the importance of inner strength. Returning home that evening, Aisha reflected on the journey so far. She thought about her early days of insecurity, the harsh judgments of classmates and neighbors, and the quiet doubts that had haunted her for years. She realized how much she had grown, how she had transformed fear and self-doubt into confidence and skill. Her experience with Shiraz and his family had taught her that true value comes from character, dedication, and integrity, and that societal judgments could never define her worth. Aisha's story began to inspire others in small ways. Some neighbors who had once whispered criticism now approached her with respect, acknowledging her talent and dedication. Younger girls in the town began to look up to her, seeing that success and recognition were possible through hard work and courage, regardless of appearance. Aisha understood that change would be gradual, but even small steps toward respect and acceptance were meaningful. She also noticed a personal transformation that went beyond cooking and recognition. Aisha's sense of self-worth had deepened. She walked with her head held higher, spoke with more confidence, and carried herself with a quiet strength that drew people's attention. She realized that true confidence comes not from pleasing others, but from believing in one's own abilities and value. This internal change was more significant than any external validation, and it marked a turning point in her life. By the time she returned to the ranch for the next visit, Aisha was no longer the nervous girl who had once feared rejection. She was prepared to embrace new challenges, to continue learning, and to grow further. Shiraz welcomed her with the same calm, respectful demeanor, recognizing the transformation in her character and confidence. Together, they continued to build a partnership founded on mutual respect, skill, and trust, preparing Aisha for the next stage of her life, a stage that promised even greater opportunities and challenges. Through these experiences, Aisha learned a valuable truth. Courage, skill, and integrity can overcome judgment and prejudice. She realized that the path to respect and recognition is not easy, but it is attainable through consistent effort, resilience, and self-belief. Her journey was far from over, but she had taken significant steps toward a future where she could define her own worth and shape her destiny on her own terms. By the time Aisha prepared for her next visit to the ranch, she had changed more than she realized. She no longer worried about whispers from the town or about what strangers might think. She had grown in confidence, skill, and self-respect. Her talent in cooking was now undeniable, and her courage had won her respect from Shiraz, his family, and some townspeople. Yet, she also knew that this journey was about more than food. It was about proving to herself that she deserved happiness, recognition, and love just as she was. When she arrived at the ranch, Shiraz greeted her with the calm warmth she had come to rely on. Over time, their relationship had evolved into a strong bond of trust and mutual respect. Shiraz had seen her grow from a nervous, self-conscious girl into a young woman with confidence, intelligence, and grace. He admired her not for her appearance, but for her dedication, honesty, and character. He encouraged her to continue pursuing her talent and promised to support her in every way possible. During this visit, Shiraz asked Aisha to assist him in planning a special event for the town, a celebration at the ranch where families from surrounding areas would gather to share stories, enjoy food, and celebrate the community. This was a significant opportunity for Aisha to showcase her cooking, her organizational skills, and her confidence in a public setting. She felt nervous at first, remembering how critical some people could be. But Shiraz reminded her gently, "You are more than their words. Let your work and your heart speak for themselves." Aisha worked tirelessly in preparation. She coordinated with the ranch staff, organized ingredients, and designed menus that included both traditional favorites and her own creative dishes. She moved with calm authority, giving instructions clearly and helping where needed. Her attention to detail and careful planning ensured that every aspect of the event would run smoothly. Shiraz observed quietly, impressed by her ability to manage not only the kitchen but also the staff and the logistical challenges of hosting such a large gathering. On the day of the celebration, the ranch was alive with activity. Families arrived from nearby towns, filling the grounds with laughter and excitement. Aisha moved through the kitchen with quiet confidence, preparing dishes with precision while maintaining a cheerful demeanor. She noticed some of the townspeople watching her closely, perhaps expecting mistakes or judging her as they always had. But she no longer allowed their opinions to affect her. Instead, she focused on the task at hand, letting her skill and dedication shine. As the guests began to taste the food, Aisha watched their reactions with quiet satisfaction. Children smiled at the flavors of sweet puddings, elders nodded in approval at the perfectly balanced spices, and families complimented her presentation and organization. Her efforts were acknowledged not only through words but through the expressions of delight and gratitude around her. For the first time, she truly felt the reward of her dedication. During the celebration, Shiraz took a moment to speak publicly, praising Aisha's skill, character, and dedication. He highlighted how she had overcome challenges, remained true to herself, and brought people together through her cooking. His words were sincere and commanding, silencing any lingering doubts in the minds of the guests. Some townspeople who had previously criticized her began to see her in a new light, realizing that her talent, effort, and heart mattered far more than shallow judgments about her appearance. After the event, as the guests departed, Shiraz approached Aisha privately. He spoke with calm sincerity, telling her how proud he was of her growth, her courage, and the way she had carried herself through the challenges she faced. He admitted that from the very beginning he had admired her honesty, her passion for cooking, and her determination to overcome adversity. Aisha felt a wave of warmth and gratitude. His words confirmed not only her success but also her value as a person.
Over time, their relationship deepened. Shiraz proposed a partnership, not just in marriage, but in life.
He wanted Aisha to be his equal, a partner who shared his vision, values, and respect. He admired her courage and dedication, and he assured her that her worth had never been measured by her appearance. Aisha, strengthened by her own growth and self-respect, accepted the proposal. She approached it with confidence and clarity, knowing that her happiness and dignity were essential in any relationship. The wedding, though simple, was meaningful. It took place at the ranch with family and supportive townspeople in attendance. The ceremony reflected their mutual respect, love, and partnership. Aisha walked with confidence, wearing a simple dress that allowed her natural beauty and grace to shine. She felt proud of herself, not because of how she looked, but because of the journey she had taken to arrive at this moment. She had faced fear, defied judgment, and grown into a woman capable of achieving happiness on her own terms. Life after the wedding brought new opportunities. Aisha continued to run her cooking business, now thriving with Shiraz's encouragement and support. Together, they explored new ideas, experimented with recipes, and hosted events that brought the community together. Aisha became a source of inspiration, especially for young girls in the town who had previously faced similar challenges. She demonstrated that talent, perseverance, and integrity could overcome prejudice, and that self-worth was not defined by appearances. Shiraz's support never wavered. He treated Aisha as an equal, valuing her opinions, decisions, and creativity. Their partnership was built on mutual respect, love, and trust, providing a stable foundation for their shared life. Through this relationship, Aisha discovered that true love is rooted in respect and understanding, not societal expectations or superficial judgments. She had found someone who valued her for who she truly was, and this acceptance allowed her to flourish even further. As the years passed, Aisha's reputation as a talented cook and a confident, inspiring woman grew. She continued to manage her kitchen and home with efficiency, warmth, and creativity. Her dishes became sought after, not only in her town but also in neighboring communities. People who once judged her harshly now approached her with respect, seeking advice, learning from her example, and acknowledging her hard work and skill. But the most important change was within Aisha herself. She no longer measured her worth by others' opinions. She had discovered the power of courage, dedication, and self-respect. She understood that while society might try to define a person based on appearance, true value is revealed through actions, kindness, and talent. This realization allowed her to live fully, embrace opportunities, and build meaningful relationships based on mutual respect and love. Even in moments of challenge, Aisha drew on the lessons she had learned throughout her journey. She remembered the fear she had felt as a girl, the whispers of the town, and the doubts that had once held her back. She realized that every challenge she had faced had strengthened her, preparing her to embrace life's possibilities with confidence. Her journey had transformed her from a young girl haunted by judgment into a woman who commanded respect, inspired others, and lived authentically. In the town, Aisha became a quiet symbol of hope and resilience. People began to understand that appearance is not the measure of a person's worth. Young girls looked up to her, aspiring not only to cook like her but also to embody the confidence, courage, and self-respect she displayed. Aisha knew that her story had the power to change perceptions and challenge long-held prejudices, and she carried that responsibility with grace and humility. Shiraz and Aisha continued to work together not only in the kitchen but also in building a life filled with trust, love, and shared dreams. Their relationship was a testament to the power of respect and understanding. They celebrated each other's strengths, supported each other's ambitions, and faced challenges together with courage and unity. Their partnership became an example for others, showing that love flourishes when built on equality, respect, and authenticity. In the end, Aisha realized that her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined. The girl who once believed that no one would marry her had become a woman admired for her talent, respected for her character, and loved for who she truly was. She had faced the judgments of society, proven her worth, and discovered the joy of living a life defined by her own values rather than the opinions of others. And through it all, she never forgot the simple truth she had spoken to Shiraz years ago. I can cook. What had begun as a humble statement of skill had grown into a declaration of strength, courage, and self-belief. It had opened doors, changed lives, and transformed her world. Aisha's story was no longer just about cooking or overcoming prejudice. It was about discovering inner strength, embracing self-worth, and finding love and respect through honesty, dedication, and courage. She had become the woman she had always hoped to be, not because of how the world saw her, but because of how she saw herself. Her journey showed that true change begins within, and that one person's courage and talent can inspire an entire community to see beyond appearances and value what truly matters. In the warmth of the kitchen, surrounded by the people she loved, Aisha finally understood that happiness is not found in the approval of others, but in the confidence, respect, and love we cultivate for ourselves and those around us.